Alright, this is Lincoln Anderson with 352 Media Group. Thanks for watching another Windows Phone Lightning design review. We're going to take a look at a couple of Windows Phone app designs and talk about how the designs might be improved for better usability and aesthetics. So we got a couple apps today. Just jump right into it. The first app we're going to look at is a transportation app. It's I believe it's in French, so I'm going to do my best to understand that as an English speaker, but basically it's going to help you to understand different bus lines and rail lines and which stations you can transfer from one to the other, what stops they make, that sort of thing, for a very specific area. So it's got a very specific audience. So this is the main page for this app, and you can dive into these different lines or bus in the lower left you can see. So tapping on any one of those would kind of dive in and show you what stops are made on those lines. Down at the bottom there's a weather update, looks like, and also looks like some news alerts, maybe if there's inclement weather or if there's a particular line that's out of service or stop that can't be made or something like that, you might put urgent notices out there. So I think this app is, it pretty much reinforces a lot of the concepts in the Windows Phone design language: clarity, simplicity, focusing on what is really important to the user. I just had one suggestion. If I'm understanding the content down below correctly, it might be neat to do something like this, where you could list the lines, and then the news that was appropriate to those lines would be over to the right side. So just kind of more like a visual correlation between important alerts and updates and those rail lines. But otherwise, this looks pretty good. Diving into the app, you can look at a specific area and see specific stops and what lines make those stops. I think this is pretty good. One of the things that is tough about maps is picking colors that contrast well with the background. In Windows Phone we try to use flat color backgrounds and not a lot of texture and leave it clean and simple so that it's not too cluttered, it's not too busy. But with a map you don't really have that option. It's just going to be roads and buildings and fields and everything you can see there. So you just have to choose a design for your overlays that's going to contrast well. So this does that pretty well. Down below you can see that there's sort of a drawer that you can pull out, and there's something like a circle button in the middle, that yellow button, that would allow you to drag the drawer up and down. So I think that's pretty good. The buttons, it's pretty big. I think you need a hit area, a tappable area for your finger that is that large. I don't know that yellow button really needs to be that big. So maybe even just making the whole bar tiny bit thicker and putting that little grip, the white lines inside of that, would do the trick. I've got some of these ideas already mocked up. You can see the bar over there. It's just kind of a slimmer way of doing it. So you can, when you're designing something like that, you can make the hit area a little bit larger than just the graphic bar. But it just kind of reduces the clutter a little bit and makes the whole interface a little calmer. The other thing I did really minor is you'll see the central pop-up little flag overlay in the map. I added a little thin outline around the bubble itself. This is optional. I think that it's very minor. I was just going to point this out, that when you're doing mapping, like I was talking about, there's a lot of noise in the map. One way to guarantee that your overlays are always going to contrast is to put an outline around those bubbles and labels that you have. And you can see with the text, most map, Bing Maps does this, and other maps do it too. They add a little thin black outline around the white text, like on the roads. And the reason that they do that is just to provide contrast, whether it's on a light color or on a dark color. You're going to be able to read that text. So Still a little tip there to add outlines. The last suggestion that I had about the screen was just to reduce the noise a little bit down below. There's column divisions between the location and the distance and then the lines that are served. And they're pretty thick, and it just chops up that whole bottom area, and it doesn't really provide a lot extra in terms of alignment. If you look over on the right side of the screen, you can see I just took those out completely, and it's still very clear that the central column is distance and the right column is line served. As long as you have enough padding between those areas and they're aligned, that vertical line goes straight down, you don't really need those harsh divisions. And the last thing that I did there was I just used a slightly darker background color to add some striping to the rows. If you have a lot of real estate in your app, you can use margins heavily to separate rows like this. But here we're trying to put a lot on the screen, so something like very thin gray divisions or row striping might be appropriate. So again, I mean, I think this is a pretty good looking app. It's just I'm just looking for opportunities to kind of reduce the noise a little bit and just kind of clean it up. The screen that I want to look at is this is looking at a bus line, and you can see the map area. Again, the drawer, you can slide that up and down. You can have a larger map area or a smaller list down below. And I think that's kind of a neat feature to give users. You never know how much of a map area they're going to need depending on what kind of location they're in. I had a couple of suggestions here, and I kind of mocked some of them up. If we needed to have one of those little pop-up marker flags for each one of the bus stops, or if we could just use something simpler like a little dot. I think it might be easier to see where the locations are, where the stops are on the road, if it was just a dot. And then if you want, you can select a particular stop, and then that becomes highlighted, and you can see the label that pops out. So you can see I've added like a selected state down below, and then you can just tap through these if you wanted to. And I've also taken the labeling, turning labels on and off. I've moved that to an app bar button. This is what in the original screenshot, you can see in the top left, there's a little box that says auto. So that's kind of a mapping function. But so on the right, I've just moved that down to an app bar function. So again, it looks really clean. I like the way the colors are used as kind of a theme. I think is nice. Everything is still pretty legible. Just looking for minor ways to kind of reduce the noise and clutter a little bit. The last screen I want to look at for this particular app is this is just next arrivals. So if you're looking at a particular location, you can see what are the lines that are going to be stopping at this location soon. And you can see there's a little bit of a pivot, so you can pivot through different lines. But what I really wanted to focus on here was the bottom half of this screen, where the locations or the lines are listed out, and also with the times on each. It's a little bit jumbled. I think it's clear what you're looking at. I can visually associate each one of the lines with a time. I get it. I'm just, the way that things are, the different blocks are different heights, and I just feel like it could be a little bit cleaner, that's all. So here's one suggestion. To take an entire row for each one of these lines. I think it's interesting there are times where doing like a 2-column layout makes sense. But if you find yourself squishing items into a 2-column layout, and you have something like this 108 line, looks like it's for a university, and there's a lot of wrapping going on, it looks really crunched in there. It looks like everything's really trying to be crammed into that column. So just to make it breathe a little bit easier, you can divide it up among individual rows for each item and just make it a 1-column. And if you're trying to put more on the screen, you can adjust your text sizes and how much padding you have between each item, that sort of thing. But just a two-column layout may not be appropriate for how much text and content you have for each one of these stops. So I wanted to take a minute and just, I've referenced this before in the past, but I just wanted to take a minute and point out the Windows Phone Toolkit that Coding4Fun puts out. And this is really useful. I've mentioned some of these controls before. And so I just wanted to kind of show you where that is. This is on Codeplex. You can grab it. This is, this isn't something that will come with your default templates for creating a Windows Phone project. You can get through NuGet, and it's got additional controls that you might find really handy. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel for something like a round button or a round toggle button, for example, you can see some visual examples down here. There's sort of a time picker that they've created. There's a lot of stuff that you might have seen like as part of the operating system in Windows Phone, or you might have seen another app do it. And instead of having to reinvent the wheel, you can just come here and get it. You can see there's color pickers, there's all sorts of things. And it's not limited to controls. I think the controls are the most visually interesting thing to show off for these design reviews, but there's also interesting libraries for doing more efficient development behind the scenes. So I recommend checking that out. No matter what state your app is in, even during the design stages, you want to be aware of what's possible. The second, I looked at this one last week, but I wanted to give it another look because the developer had made some design updates, and also I didn't have a lot of time last week to go into a lot of detail. This developer submitted probably 20 or so different screens, so I just kind of ran through all of them really quickly. So I'll just do a little bit more of a deep dive on a couple and illustrate some of the points that I was making. So here you can see, again, this developer has the Windows Phone grid left in. This is, it looks like this is probably just in the design stages right now. So that's what the blue lines are there. Those wouldn't be in the final publishing of the app. So this is an app that basically helps you find deals on products, and you can also sell your own products. So it's kind of like a Amazon, eBay type of app. So this is the part of the app where you would see you're looking for a particular item, in this case a shoe, what stores are selling it, and what kind of deals do they have. It's basically what's going on in this screen. So I had mentioned that maybe some of the alignment on here could be better. I'm not sure what's going on with the different colored squares on the right side of the stores. It's almost like it's a button or like a tile that you have to tap. You want to make sure that when you're listing out something here, like a store name and the price, and there's a button, that the entire thing is tappable. You want to make as much as you can in your app tappable. If there's a label for something, you can tap it to get more information. So, if you're doing that appropriately, circle buttons and tiles and little squares and stuff, it's not really necessary. You can just include the name as a label, and the user can tap on it. You can just make it as simple as that. So what might that look like? I'll just open a comp that I put together. Here I use the name of the product as the main title with access to the photo gallery, and then down below included a smaller pivot for stores and details, and then selling your own if you're wanting to sell a product just like this. I think it's important when you're deciding, you have a pivot on your screen, but it's kind of within the scope. Like stores and details, that's a subset of the product itself. I'm asking for details on the product. I'm asking for what stores sell this product. So I would consider maybe putting the product name as sort of the main title of this, and then providing a pivot to options and details about that down below. So it's a little unconventional, but I think it makes sense. If you look on the right side of the screen, you're kind of working top down in terms of understanding what this entire screen is about, and then drilling down as your eye moves down the page. And again, I'm kind of using, I think part of maybe why this designer was bringing these different colors in, this orange and this beige color, was just to add some sort of branding, some personality to the app. So over on the right, I'm using those same colors, but I'm just using them in a different way. Instead of introducing new elements and clutter, I'm just taking what I already was going to do, a pivot, and then a list of the stores, and applying that color scheme to it. So it's a lot less busy, it's a lot less clean, but it does all the same things that that the original interface did. The other thing that I did was I moved the app bar icons. I kind of collapsed that bar. You can collapse your app bar in certain scenarios if you think it's not a user doesn't need immediate access to it, and you'd rather have more screen space available. So I chose to do that here because nothing really screams that searching or settings, they're not really that critical to this particular screen. So you can kind of collapse it there. So yeah, moving forward into the next screen, I wanted to look at this, where you would decide, yeah, I want to purchase this particular product, and you want to select the quantity and, in this case, size for a shoe. I don't know if this app, all the products that they showed were shoes, but yeah, I'm fairly sure they certainly have other categories as well. So you might have size, or you might have multiple characteristics. There might be, maybe what gender you are, or something like that. So there might be more than just the quantity and size options, just something to keep in mind. So here you can see there's some kind of unconventional things. There's an add to cart tile, which is typically a tile is sort of a window into more content. It doesn't perform an action. You'd want to use some sort of a button for that instead. And then we've got these other things that look like tiles, quantity and size, but they're really more like pickers. They're more like list pickers. You might want to allow the user to enter in a number manually, maybe for quantity, or you might want them to choose from a list for something like size. So, but in any case, a tile, or whatever this is, a sort of zebra striped list, is not probably the traditional way to do it. I'm not sure what would happen if you would tap these different numbers. So what would be kind of a cleaned up traditional way of doing it? Here I'm using, again, the same kind of top-down architecture from that previous screen, where I'm showing the name of the product and the gallery. And then down below I'm saying, okay, a second ago you were looking at all the stores that were available, but right now we're just looking at Shoes Mania. This is the store that's selling it. I've highlighted, using the branding color, the deal that you are probably interested in, here in this case free shipping. And I'm using just normal form inputs, form labels and inputs for the size and the quantity. So these both looked like text inputs, but you could make them text inputs if you wanted. What you could do with size is actually make it, when you tap it, it opens up a list picker of, it would be like a full screen experience of all the sizes that were available, and you could pan through them and choose what you like. The other thing I've done is I've made the app bar only provide one command that's really key to the screen, which is checking out. It's putting it in the basket. You can add a very small label to these buttons, so it could say add to cart down here. But I think what's interesting about putting commands like this in the app bar is it makes it very clear what you should be focusing on. If it's in the middle of search and shop and send a message and settings, you're going to lose it. But here I've taken all those sort of app-wide utility type of commands, put them in the expanded app bar, so they're down below if you were to pull this up. And really we're just focusing on the checkout. You could make this a button on the canvas if you wanted to, just a big button on the bottom that says add to cart. It's kind of up to you, but I would definitely make it a button of some sort and not a tile. Just to make it clear. I mean, also putting it towards the bottom is going to mean it's easier for you to hit with your thumb if you're using this app with one hand. If all the buttons and elements are towards the bottom, it could be easier to reach that way. So the next screen we're going to look at is, believe this is the last one for this app. This is adding a picture. So this is if you decided you were going to sell a product yourself through this app. You could add a photo from your gallery, or you could take a photo with the camera on your phone. So the way that the developer had originally set this up was you had to make a choice right away. Before you get really any kind of experience, you have to choose if you want to take a photo or choose or pick from the gallery. Now, that's not. I don't think that's necessarily bad, but just as an alternative, I wonder what it would feel like if you started loading the user's gallery in right away, and then down at the bottom there was an option for the camera, and you could kind of toggle between those experiences. I think it could be more fluid if, I don't know, you might have to ask some of your users if 9 times out of 10 they're choosing something from their gallery, then maybe just dropping them right into that experience right away would be better. If most of the time they're taking a camera shot and they don't want to wait for their gallery to load, or there's some performance concerns there, then maybe that's not the best way of doing it. Just something to think about for the developer. So that's it for today, just 2 apps. We're going to be doing another session next Thursday, February 28th. And if you submit your app before Tuesday, we'll make sure to review it. Thanks a lot.